Hi traders, Mandi here from High Performance Trading. So first of all, thanks to everyone who joined us for the Emotional Mastery for High Performance Trading mentoring webinar. The way it works is that you guys come show me the challenges that you have, or a case study, an example of a trade that you really messed up, and then I coach and mentor you through looking for solutions together. Now, today I want to share with you one of those examples of one of those case studies that we did during the webinar. So this trader came with quite a devastating experience. He's actually usually a really good trader who is okay with taking his losses, but because the market has been so volatile, and there were a few times when he got punished for taking his loss, meaning that his stop loss was how it used to be, in the last few years, but because of the volatility, it was too tight. He got taken out, and then the trade would continue without him to his profit target. So that really created a lot of uncertainty and emotional and mental anguish, and he started messing up with his trading a little. And this trade was a complete mess up. It was a complete wipeout. Now, he knows what to do and he knew better, but he still completely did the opposite of what he actually knows to do. Let me share my screen so you can follow what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see here epic entry to the long side, and he really nailed it. And the trade went into profit really, really well. He was quite a good profit, and he thought that's it. That was the bottom, and he thought now we're just going to have a little retracement. That's fine. This big green candle, he actually added one more position. And according to his strategy, when there was this red candle, that's when you should have exited. But, he was just getting stubborn and he thought to himself, it's just going to retest this supply area here and then it's going to take off again. So he started in his mind adjusting and justifying why not to take his loss. Or, it was actually still in a profit, so why to take the profit having left quite a bit of money on the table? But, he was being stubborn, so he added again to his long position. And what we had to do is we had to really look at what was going on for him, because logically he knew it was time for him to exit, but emotionally he was stuck. Like he started getting frozen and started just looking in his rigidity, looking for long entries. Now, that wasn't a problem itself. You see, he still had the stop loss, but when we had this chop here, he started moving his stop loss. And eventually he completely removed the stop loss. And you can imagine what happened. The trade flushed through, and that was the moment when things really started to get unraveled. He froze, he knew he had to get out, but he just couldn't get himself to press that pesky mouse button. And logically, he knew it, but emotionally, he was just feeling that he was not capable to do what he needed. He had to do what he knew he had to do. So he started hoping for miracles, and he started hoping that he could maybe at least get out at break even. And of course, we all know, we have all experienced at some stage in our trading career, hope is not an exit strategy. Now, eventually, the emotional pain of holding that loss, and he also started getting margin called, was greater and outweighed the fear of closing the position. And it was a big loss. It really took a lot of his capital, his goose that lays golden eggs, as I always say. And it was just really devastating for him. So this is the kind of self-sabotage that happens not from lack of knowledge, but from old conditional emotional patterns. And recognizing this, that's the first step. And that's the thing, so many traders that come to me, they want to have a magic wand and they want me to fix the problem, the not taking the loss. But guys, there is just no such thing as a magic wand and a quick fix. We usually have to go deeper down into what is going on there. Where did you learn this kind of behavior? And so this is how I help this trader starting to overcome the self-sabotaging behavior. So first, we looked at the emotional drivers. Because again, he didn't break his rules because he didn't know them. He broke them because there was something underneath that stopped him. So underneath, I mean, in his subconscious, that stopped him from taking that loss. And it's painful. Like I totally get it. And I've been there myself, and I would still find it painful, and everybody would find it painful. That's completely normal. So so I said to him, so what happened? What did you think? What did you feel? And he said, every time I decided to close the trade and press that mouse button, this thought would slide in. Like, I bet you the moment I close this trade now, it's going to turn around and go skyrocket to new highs without me. So that was always the mental cinema that was going on, this mind movie that was going on for him. Of course, that's not helping, right? And then he started praying, please turn around. If it turns around, I promise I will never, ever, ever make this mistake again. So he's starting to hope. And yeah, I have been praying in my past too. And sometimes I find myself praying as well, but I completely immediately stop that when I find myself in that situation. And the thing is, even if we promise not to make that mistake again, it always ends up being an empty promise because the root cause of the behavior, of the problematic behavior, hasn't been resolved as yet. Now, on the surface level, he wanted to avoid the emotional pain of taking the loss. But what was then underneath for him was a feeling of shame around having screwed up so badly. So that was what he needed to address. And the moment he realized that it was actually shame, it lost a lot of its power over him. It was like, wow, he could breathe again, and all that heavy weight was falling off him. And when we have this understanding of why we do the things that we do, often it allows us again to start thinking clearly. Because when we are feeling under stress or in shame or one of those experiences, emotions, we can't access our prefrontal cortex, our rational thinking brain. And that's why we do illogical things, even though logically we know better. Right? So it's completely driven by the survival brain, the amygdala. So through guided coaching, I helped him bring to the surface the exact emotions and the thoughts and even the past experiences fueling the self-sabotaging behavior. And it comes to no surprise to me that as a child he was bullied and his lunch money was stolen from him. And guess what the market did? The market stole his lunch money. And so that's why he froze, exactly the behavior that happened when he was bullied as a school kid. It's so interesting. So what we then had to do, once we understood that, we had to interrupt and rewire these old behavioral patterns, because that is when we start trading our survival mechanisms, our coping mechanisms. And we needed to teach him new mechanisms, new behavioral patterns that he could use instead of the old ones that he learned when he was, I don't know, a 10-year-old kid, right? He is, a grown man now. He doesn't need to get back to old childish survival patterns, right? But unless we are becoming fully aware of it, it is really hard to reprogram, but it is possible. So in this case, it was great. As I said, he played full out. He was so determined to find out what's stopping him that there was no stopping him to finding out the truth and changing his destiny. I absolutely loved working with him. It was even so that he was from the UK and he was in the US session, which was the first one that we had. So that means it was like 2 o'clock in the morning for him. That is the dedication that, I have all the time in my life for this kind of trader. Now, what we did is we helped him to identify ways to deal with unexpected market moves, because what really happened, if that trade had been slowly going into a loss, he actually would have been able to take the loss. But because it was such a flush, it was like a blow to the system almost, he found it incredibly hard to get out. So we looked at different scenarios, how he used to get caught by surprise and completely frozen in the past. And then we derived new steps for him, new practical strategies or behavioral strategies on how he could respond in this kind of situation from a place of empowerment. Right? So how could he face the bullies? How could he outsmart the bullies? How could he just completely, I don't know, bash them up and run away, right? So that would have been the equivalent of taking the loss and leaving, maybe leaving the screen. So the second part that we did was we practiced those new behavior strategies. So reprogramming his automatic thoughts, for example. So instead of thinking, oh my God, I think the moment I'm going to take my loss, this is going to turn around and leave me behind in the dust with my loss and, climbing Mount Everest. To respond to that, we literally did role plays where he spoke out loud what his challenges were, and I became his little unconscious and changing that pattern, right? So what does price action tell you? What does your risk management tell you? I know it freaking hurts, but you can take it. You're stronger than you think you are. You got this. And so this is what we call somatic anchoring. So where I create an emotional experience of safety around taking losses. And then the mental rehearsal to really reprogram his unconscious and install and help him create new neural pathways in his brain so that he can create new habits and leave the old habits in the past. So when we unlearn old habits and we forget about old habits, neurons literally leave each other. And when we create new habits, neurons literally connect with each other. So that's what we did. I hope you find this useful and you can apply those little hacks for yourself. And yeah, happy trading. Maybe you want to join us in the next mentoring webinar, which is beginning of May. And yeah, happy trading. Stay safe in those volatile markets. And as I always say, every successful trader has a dark past, which means that every losing trader can have a bright future. And having said that, I wish you a happy, bright future.